What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Will and Rock MMA podcast.
What's going on, everyone? We got some breakdowns on UFC news, and we're going to be talking about UFC Fight Night 135 in Lincoln, Nebraska. That's coming up this Saturday, actually.
Let's get to it. What's the first thing?
The first thing on the list, we got Evan Dunham, who's actually going to retire right after UFC Fight Night 137 in Brazil. Yeah. Somebody who's given so much to the sport, somebody who's always been game for the UFC, who's put on great shows. I enjoy seeing fighters like this who see the light in the end of the tunnel, know that going into title contention really is far from. It's just a very long way to. Yeah, it's especially for a fighter like Evan. But also realizing that maybe it's time to hang up the gloves and stop taking poundings. I always say when you feel that you're at that young age where you haven't reached, especially in this fight game, try to walk away from it sooner, man, because you fall into the victim of becoming like, oh no, my next fight. Next thing you're in 10 losing streak and you barely could talk. So
I agree
kudos
with you
to him,
100%. Man. He had a great opportunity when BJ Penn was coming in, from retirement, and that was the first person they were going to put him up against. It turned out that BJ Penn got injured. Eventually, he was supposed to fight Ricardo Lamas, and as we know, he fought Jair Rodriguez.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
But with that being said, Evan Dunham could have easily, he should have taken that fight. Well, let me rephrase that. The UFC should have put up the fight with BJ Penn and Evan Dunham. Initially, that was the fight, and they could have both retired, and that could have been the last of them too. But instead, BJ Penn's still up in the loop. We don't know what the hell's going on with him. And kudos to Evan Dunham, because he is definitely retiring after this. So good for him.
And after coming off a one victory, he's on a one fight victory. We got Maynard. He's returning as a lightweight to fight Glens. Lens, by the way, is a freaking monster at lightweight. At UFC 229. Something to really look forward to. I mean, someone like Maynard.
To a certain extent.
Well, depending on the Maynard that's going to show up, it's what the fight's going to be. We know Lance brings it all the time. The thing about Maynard is he's so inconsistent, He's taking those losses to Frankie Edgar to heart, and he just hasn't been the same.
After that, he was never the same.
And to top it off, that Frankie fight was so long ago, man. Yeah. He has never really captured and come back and really made a name for himself. So hopefully him at lightweight will really reboost his career in the lightweight division. We'll see what happens. I know he's in a great training camp. It's just a matter of him coming out and shows it.
Great training camp. I just believe that Nick Lance, being the younger fighter, is going to show why Maynard should not take a big layoff like he did this time around, and he should, unfortunately, in my point of view, I think Maynard should hang up the gloves.
We'll see after this fight. I mean, I think after this fight, things will be a lot more clear for him. Yeah. We did discuss last week that Glover Teixeira was injured, and he pulled out of the Jimmy Manuwa fight because he could not take the fight. Yeah. They had to pick a Brazilian to take over this fight. Thiago Santos is taking over this fight.
Yeah, Thiago Santos is the perfect person to put against Jimmy Manuwa. I feel like, if you ask me, I think it's a bigger, more compelling fight than is with Glover Teixeira. It's happening in Brazil, so they had to pick a Brazilian, and we spoke about that last week. And we couldn't ask for a better person than Thiago Santos to put in the limelight. This is a guy that not only needs to shine, but if he beats a guy like Jimmy Manuwa, who's on a tear right now, he's going to be put up there, and light heavyweight division, again, sparks up, It's nice to see young people coming up.
Well, the good thing is we got someone like Jimmy Manuwa, who's still very young. Right. And we got someone like Thiago Santos, who's still very young. People who are still very hungry. One of the things going into that Glover Teixeira fight was like, man, they're once again putting a veteran versus a new. No, I won't say necessarily a newcomer because Manuwa's been doing it for a while, but somebody who really hasn't had the name versus somebody who does. Almost like the UFC is pitching Jimmy Manuwa to really step up and take the fight, because Glover is already really in the downside of his careers, where either injuries or just really losing to big names. Right. Anyways. All said and done, they picked the right Brazilian to take over this card, and it's something to look forward to. All right, massive freaking bummer for UFC 230, man.
On MSG.
Yoel Romero is out of UFC 230.
He can't recover from that orbital
bone fracture. I mean, that is so horrible, man. It's somebody who's also, we have to take into consideration, even though he looks immortal, the guy is in his 40s already, you know what I mean? And things like this are going to start looming in his career. We have to start predicting that there's going to be some injuries coming down his pipeline just because of his age. But man, what a great fight that would have been with Pablo Costa, man.
I agree with you. I think the fights that were happening in MSG, you know, they had Rockhold Weidman, they have Sosa, what's his name? Jacare. Who they put him up against? Jacare was fighting another big contender, and then you had Costa versus Yoel Romero. The perfect lineup to find out who is the number one contender. I mean, it's almost, if you ask me, it's like a tournament bracket where they have everybody in one day, in this case, in the same weight class, trying to decide who's gonna get the next title shot. And if you ask me, it's whoever puts up a better performance, because anybody of those three fights could easily get a title shot.
Yeah, man. It sucks to say Yoel is officially out of UFC 230.
Yep.
I'm curious who they're gonna put versus Pablo Costa. I mean, they still have time to put somebody out there.
They do. They have time. I just don't know if I just don't know who they're gonna put him up against. I would love to see him fight because he's the young guy. He's the underdog right now. And if he would have beat Yoel Romero, for example,
my God.
Yeah, that would have been goddamn crazy. And he's coming up a tremendous win also against Uriah Hall. So it's like right after that, put him directly into Yoel Romero, which I thought it was too quick. So I'm kind of happy this didn't really happen.
What I really would have loved to see is the winner of Weidman versus Luke Rockhold take that fight versus Pablo Costa or Yoel Romero.
I think they both had a shot against Whitaker. I think it's time to give it up and try to give it to somebody else.
Give who somebody else?
Chris Weidman or Rockhold to Whitaker.
No, I guess that's a little far-fetched for now. Let's see what happens. Let's see who they put. I think it's interesting what the UFC is going to do with Pablo Costa at this point. They have a big young guy, a massive young guy, a good-looking dude that's easy to promote. They could put him on. He's already in the limelight. He's going to fight Yoel Romero. Yoel Romero's out. Who are they going to put versus him? That's very interesting. All right. Let's get straight to it. UFC Fight Night 135 in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah, this is the predictions.
These are the predictions, guys. You know how it works. Whoever loses ends up taking shots for the next podcast. We got Elk Andres versus Tim Williams.
To be honest, I don't know too much about either one of these fighters. In that case, I'm picking Ted Williams.
I got Elk Andres just to go against you. Another thing that's very surprising about this card, by the way, is that this card is going to have 6 main events. Usually, when you have UFC fight nights, there's usually 4.
Right.
Pay-per-views, we all know, have 5. This is interesting enough. This is going to be 6 fights for the main event, or at least that's the way most of these big MMA websites have it, whether it's UFC or whether it's MMA Junkie. We have a bunch of other websites that have it up that way. So it's interesting. Mm-hmm. Next fight, we got Diverson Figueroa versus John Morega. I got...
Oh, yes, right.
Thank you very much. I got John Morega. Not familiar with these fighters.
Neither am I. Which is interesting because we had... what's that kid that beat CM Punk? Mickey Gall, who's in this card, and he's not even on this main card, which is ridiculous.
Wow, yeah.
But who do you got? I apologize.
No, I got John Morgana.
Okay, you got him. I got that other guy.
Diverson Figueroa.
Right, I got Figueroa.
I got next fight. We got the Colombian Brandon Barberena. Am I saying his name right?
Barberena, something like that.
Barberena. He's fighting Jake Ellenberger. Fuck my
life. It's hard to pick against Jake Ellenberger. He's had a great performance as of late. I feel like he will take the victory by decision. I don't think there's any stoppage in this fight.
Okay, I got Barberena. I'm going for the South American fighter. I also believe Jake Ellenberger is also on that toss-up, man. Yep. Win or lose, you got to start thinking about retirement at this point. And I feel like Barina is actually the hungrier fighter going into this fight. That's my personal opinion. Next fight, we got Courtney Casey versus Angela Hill. I got Angela Hill. I think her endurance, her non-stop pressure is she's gonna prevail in this fight. And she needs a victory, dude. She needs like the UFC's been trying to push her for a while, and she keeps coming very short. It's because she doesn't have that knockout power. She has the endurance. She's capable of throwing leg kicks, punches. She's a very well all-around mixed martial artist, but she hasn't found a way to put it all together to be that superstar.
I have Casey coming into this fight. I believe that Casey has the better endurance. I believe that Casey has the better stand-up and the better wrestling. If it's one overall fighter, I would like to think it's Casey over the fighter you're picking. So for that reason, Casey's the winner.
All right, so you got Casey. I got Angela.
And by the way, by submission, second round.
Interesting, yeah. And I could totally see that happening too. Next fight, we got Andre Philly versus Michael Johnson.
Okay. You get to pick. Go for it. Oh no, I got to. You get. So it's hard to pick against Johnson. Johnson hasn't been performing, the same Johnson that started from the beginning. I believe that, after the Khabib fight, we saw big holes in his game, both on the ground, and we saw how Nick Diaz picked them apart in the stand-up game. I believe that not only could Philly win, but Philly's was gonna knock his lights out. I think Philly has a lot more power than Johnson, and as much as Johnson's gonna want to wrestle, I believe that Philly's gonna try to keep it on his feet and gonna knock him out.
All right, I got Michael Johnson in this card. Reason behind it, reminding me of the Ultimate Fighter. His improvements on every fight has been very impressive. I believe this guy is still on the come up. He's still young. He has a ton of freaking endurance. I believe that he's going to grind this fight out and win decision. That's my prediction on the Michael Johnson fight. Last but not least, we got Justin Gaethje versus, did I say his name right this time around? It's Gaethje, goddammit. Fucking Gaethje. We got Justin Gaethje versus James Vick. This is, and I guess this one's on me.
It should be. I should be the
Go ahead, yes, because last time
So, if Gaethje's coming out to bang with Vick, James has the upper hand. But if Gaethje decides that he's when he finally wants to wrestle after everybody's been waiting for it, people is like, oh, what a tremendous wrestler, and all of a sudden he comes out banging. If he becomes to wrestle, I believe that Gaethje could grind him out and could win by decision. I believe that Gaethje is the type of fighter that comes into the octagon with a mindset to wrestle, and once he gets hit in the face, he loves it so much he wants to stand up and bang with you. For that reason, I got James Vick knocking him out in the second round.
All right, I would love to pick I would love to pick Justin. I'm not saying his last name again. I'd like to pick Justin, but I'm going to go with James Vick. I think I got James Vick knocking him out in the first round. I'm going to go with you on this one.
I said second round.
I don't know. I'm going to go with you as far as him winning. I got him in the first round. I think Justin is a really hard head. He's one of these fighters who just loves and bangs. This is why he's getting the main event. He lost his last fight. He's getting the main event in this card. The reason behind it is that he does what he needs to do to put on a show. But that doesn't necessarily mean a victory half of the time.
Yeah, a lot of the time.
So with that being said, man, I got James Vick as well. Knockout round 1. Guys, that's pretty much it for this podcast. Anything you want to say? You got everything else?
Yeah, let's
catch us on the Will and Rock MMA podcast. Catch us on the Will and Rock MMA on Twitter and also on Instagram. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Peace.